she was incredibly joyful and happy, and she never complained about being sick. She never complained about dying. She was really amazing. She learned sign language because towards the end she found it quite difficult to talk a lot of the time. And she said that you could get by saying thank you and please and food and water and I love you.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And she used to say beautiful things like, oh, we had this big kids pushchair because she couldn't walk so well. And I remember one day lugging her up the stairs, and we got to the top and she said, I love you too, Mum. and then I said, I was puffing away, and I said, oh, what do you mean? And she goes, because love's doing stuff for people, isn't it? Not just saying it. And yeah, she had some absolutely beautiful wee gems like that throughout her being sick. And yeah, it really carried us along, that she found joy in every day, from little things and big things, from her sisters, from us, from her little cousin that came around every day, and Nana and Granddad visiting, and all those things made her really happy. One particular day, so our parish priest used to come and visit her, and one day he turned up to give her communion, and we said, oh, Father Mark's here, and he's going to give you communion. And she was like, yay! And she was just like so excited by those things that we just take for granted. And I think I've been reflecting on a little bit with being in isolation, those things that we just take for granted, like being able to go wherever we want, or go to church and receive communion, and those things. They are appreciated more when you can't just have them. And it was just like that for Tara.
Yeah.
She at one point she lost the ability to walk, but then remarkably her tumour stopped growing at one point, and she told us, she said, it stopped growing, I want to have a scan. And then she could ride her bike again and things. And so we took her for another scan. Sure enough, the tumour had stopped growing. And from that point, we got to go on a trip to Australia. So there was some...
And so she told you that?
She told us that, yeah.
Wow.
And I didn't want to have another scan. I was like, I can't cope with any more bad news. I can't do it.
Yeah.
And he didn't really encourage me. He just said, look, she wants to... She might be right, and she was right, and the tumour had stopped growing, and there was absolutely no explanation for it because it was growing at 0.5 millimetre a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is really, really fast. And it stopped long enough that we could go on holiday and she could go back to school for a couple of months. Yeah, it was amazing.
That is, I would call that a miraculous gift. That is, yeah, what a gift in the midst of something so challenging.
Yeah.
Tell me, do you feel comfortable about talking about the moment where she dies, she passes on? What was that like?
Aspects of it. Yeah. I'll rewind a little bit before that, because as I mentioned before, there were a couple of critical times.
Yeah.
One particular one was a few weeks, about 5 weeks before she actually died, and twice in one, she'd been unconscious for a couple of days, and twice in one night she stopped breathing, and I couldn't hear her heartbeat, and I was just holding her, but then she started again, and then she woke up again the next day, and I was saying prayers with her, and I said, I'm just so glad that you're here with us, Tara. I really thought you went to heaven last night. She goes, I did. I went twice.
Wow.
And and I hadn't said to her that she'd stopped breathing, or no one had said anything like that to her.
Yeah.
And she said, I did, but she said, but it wasn't my time, she said, or I've got it written down somewhere, but it was around that. Yeah. And I said, what was it like? And she said, it was just so comfy, and all the holy people were there, and that was it. That was how simple it was. And that just brought us so much comfort. Like when your own children just say, oh, I'm just going outside to play, and they're just so matter of fact.
Yeah.
That was how she spoke. It was just matter of fact. And whenever she talked about dying, she would say beautiful things to me, like she said, just don't cry about it, Mum, because you look so weird when you cry. And she said to me, I'm just going to see Jesus. I'm just going to see him, and I'll always be here. I'm just going to see Jesus, and
Wow.
yeah, her simplicity and how she spoke of her faith and how she spoke about death was at the same time comforting and confronting, because there was no big mystery around it. She knew what was happening, and then so when she did die, it was a lot less. There was just us, just how she came into the world, just me and her dad and her together, and it was just a really personal and profound moment of us being together, and very similar parallels to childbirth, in that it's something that you can't really explain to another person, because it is such a powerful personal thing.
So after that point, obviously you have the funeral and all the usual, what you might call, I guess, the family and the communal sort of mourning that would happen, and then everyone goes away. What was that part of the experience like? Was because obviously I think a lot of us, when we have people we know who go through these sorts of journeys, we pour everything into them in the lead up to the passing, the death, and then afterwards often it seems perhaps that's when perhaps they might need people the most, but they're often on their own.
Well, I'm very blessed to be married to someone who he's excellent at thinking about what might happen next, whereas I tend to be a bit more focused right on now. And so Eden had really thought about what we might do after Tara had died. So we actually already had a family holiday planned. And through the support of Child Cancer Foundation, we obviously didn't have to or anything, but we knew that we were going to do that. And so after the funeral, we went up to Northland just with Hannah and Eliza for 5 days, and just reconnected with our new, smaller family, and just tried to support Hannah and Eliza as much as we could through something that it was just so huge for them, and try and give them some fun, and try and give them some time, and have space to have the conversations that we needed to have with them. And we never really experienced, I feel very fortunate that we never really experienced the disappearing of support that lots of people have. The people that moved here to support us are still here. And we have really amazing support systems, and I'm so thankful for that we've never felt alone. And I think the despair that so many people experience with grief is because they don't have that genuine support, whether it's from family or services or church or whoever it is.
Tell me, I guess one of the atheist tropes, if you like, might be that this would be the sort of thing that would destroy a person's faith. That doesn't sound like that's part of your journey, though. Why? I guess the question is why do you still have faith? Why did you not lose hope in the midst of this?
Right from the start, people would say things like, "You must be so angry," and "Why you guys?" and stuff like that. But I can honestly say that for neither Eden or I, neither of us felt this "why us" thing. I think that's a little bit of a lie from media, actually, that people feel this why me, why us. And I also think in a certain way it's part of Catholic expectation that there's suffering along the way. And the thought of not continuing in my faith was never part of it. If anything, I've been inspired by Tara's very genuine and simple faith, and it's made me actually check myself that I'm actually being as honest and simple as I can with my faith, and that it doesn't it doesn't need to be hugely complicated. It needs to be honest and true, not
Tell me, were there any particular religious imagery or iconography or scriptures or things that you clung to that or got you through the journey that helped you along the way that you look back on and see as important now?
So we pray, Tara and I and her sisters, we prayed the rosary quite a bit when she was sick, and we would do a litany of saints at the end of the rosary, which grew longer and longer as time went by. And some really interesting things happened through that. Tara just one night added Simon of Cyrene to our litany. And I said, "Oh, why have you added him?" And she said, "Oh, because I want him to help me carry my cross like he helped Jesus." Yeah. And I thought that was pretty amazing. And she also asked Saint Rita to pray for her, and I'd never heard of Saint Rita. Yeah. And I don't know where she heard of Saint Rita either, but she's the patron saint of head injuries.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know where she heard that from, but so I think the traditional prayers that we have that are simple were really important to me. And right at the only prayer that I had left really was "Thy will be done." That's as simple as it got.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that actually. I've heard people talk about experiences of suffering and grief and difficulty, extreme difficulty, where they couldn't even speak words of their own, but clinging to the Psalms or to the traditional prayers of Christianity were just such comfort to them.
Yeah, and I think in a time where there actually is no answer, it's just going through what is going to happen. Yeah. The simplicity of particularly our meditative prayer was actually really helpful for me. Yeah.
Tell me, just a couple of quick things to finish with. How would you describe, you look back now on this side of the journey, 6 years later, or over 6 years right from the diagnosis, how would you describe this, the before and after, a snapshot of yourself, your family before, and then your family now? How has it changed?
Part of it, like there's, a lot. I think Eden and I have always had a really strong relationship. I think we understand each other on an even deeper level. I think going through something that huge together, I can see why it's a make or break for lots of people when you're having to make decisions multiple times a day that are life-changing decisions. If you're not on the same page, that would just be so hard. And because of that, I think our communication with each other is even better. I think our children are incredibly resilient because they have a completely different gauge of what difficulty is. Hannah and Eliza, they're really mature beyond their years, I think. But we also look at life positive way. I think we see joy and we have a lot of fun, and Tara's story is a part of our family story, but it's not how we're defined. We're not. I think I've met people along the way who have lost children, and it's really sad when they are defined by that loss, and that they just are grieving all the time in such a sad way. And I think losing a child is incredibly, incredibly hard. But you need to find a way to be able to integrate that into your life rather than be defined by it. And I think if you can't experience happiness and if you can't experience things in life that would normally bring you joy, I genuinely think that's when you need to go and seek help from somebody else. Because accepting a life without joy is just so awful. I can't imagine. But it seems that lots of people do after they've lost a child, like they're holding on, like somehow they owe that to their child to be miserable. And I just think that's so sad.
Tell me, what would you say to anyone, whether it's an individual or a family, who might be struggling with anything that is serious, complexity, it's got grief associated with it, any sort of challenge? What would your advice? Maybe even someone who's just struggling with this whole, the fear of this virus, the lockdown, all those kind of things. What would your little, I guess, nuggets of advice be to someone in those sorts of situations?
Find the truth, and just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Like you can't just stop and expect that things will get better by themselves. This whole thing that people say, oh, time heals wounds and things like that, I just actually don't buy that. I think, you have to actually work on yourself and work on your family and work on the grief, or work on whatever it is that is causing stress and pain, because time doesn't fix it. You have to put a lot of effort in to coping and to find a way to manage your everyday life of working and managing your family and getting back into your hobbies and sports and whatever it is. But life's for living, and we're not called to be miserable. We're not called to be stressed. We're not called to be anxious. And, for me, it did get to the point where I needed that outside help. Yeah. And I'm so glad for myself, but not just for myself, but for my children and for my marriage, that I did do that.
That is awesome. Jenny, that's a powerful story. I hadn't heard it in full before. I've seen a bit of video footage of bits of it. A couple of tears in my eyes there, a couple of points. Just so beautiful. I remember my wife actually told me a story that she had heard about Tara and about a playlist that she had on an iPod, I think. And about, was it Happy was one of the songs that she had. It was the final song she had still on the playlist, right?
Yeah.
And everything else was gone. And I remember being in tears hearing that story. There's something really beautiful about that. And your journey and Tara's witness to hope really is something profoundly good and beautiful. So yeah, I'm extremely grateful that you've come in today and shared that, and willing to actually share that story, and so honestly and openly. It's a real blessing. Thank you so much for doing that.
Thanks, Brendan. I love your work. I love watching what you do. I love your chats. I'll have to have a whiskey with you in real life one day.
Yeah, that'll be awesome, mate. Nothing's stopping you doing that. Not now, it's lunchtime. Thank you everyone else for tuning in. It's a real privilege to have you here with us today as well. And can I just say too that apologies, we had a bit of a disruption in the stream about halfway through, and I apologise for that. But what I'll do is I'll actually put both bits together in one video, and I'll upload that as a single video as well, and I'll post a link in the stream so you can find the second bit. Well, you're probably watching the second bit now if you might have missed the first bit, and vice versa. Apologies again for that, just working out some new streaming technology there. You guys are awesome. I'll be back tomorrow at midday, and on the midday stream tomorrow I've got another guest speaker, Peter Holmes, who's a lecturer from Notre Dame University in Australia, and we're going to be talking about some of the sort of the interesting questions around this whole crisis and issues around governance, scientism, the Orwellian risks that sort of present themselves whenever a government takes control on such a large scale. It'll be a very interesting show, so please join us. Lots of fun to be had. Jenny, thank you again for being with us. It's a real privilege and a pleasure to have you with us. Thanks, man.